First spot, no blowups. Second spot, taken. Third idea, break off a good one. I was frustrated, about ready to give up. But then I moved out to the edge of some deep grass, and that's where everything changed. Here's how I figured it out, and how you can use this pattern all summer long. I left the house thinking I'd be throwing a frog in pads all day. Overnight rain, cloudy forecast, everything said shallow bite. But by the time I launched, it was already hot and sunny, and my whole plan started falling apart. That first bite near the grass told me the fish were stuck between spring and summer, done with the bank, but not out on the deep stuff yet. They were holed up in the grass.
There we go. Those pretty two good ones on a jig. You know, I came out and you see the dark storm clouds. Over here there's a big one. It's started sprinkling a little bit. I drove through rain the whole way. You can see I'm dressed in like swim trunks and water shoes and stuff. I think it's gonna be like a rain out and the water's high. And I brought a frog and I'm all ready to get out here and frog and go shallow. And I tried that, not even a blow up. And then the sun keeps popping out. It's just one of those days to show you when you go fishing, you tie on all those baits, you're half time wasting your time. Came out to the deeper grass edge, and that's two off the outside grass edge, and I broke off one under a boat dock. I got on one of those dock poles, but going with more of the bluegill look here, I have that creature hog that I always like to throw, and this is the Berkeley skipping jig. I can skip it under the docks real easy. So I'm flipping it on the outside edge of the grass, and then also putting it underneath the docks. I don't know, you know, the water's up, it's kind of a rainy day. They should be up chasing, and what they should do doesn't matter. Just keep on experimenting until you get something to bite. Hold on, Nathan. Another jig one I found him on this grass point. I'm actually on the phone with my son. They're biting right here. I'm not throwing to them on LiveScope, but I've seen a number of them poke their heads out of the grass where I know there's a bunch up there, so I'm just gonna work this spot over. It looks like there's a little group. It makes a little grass point right here, so I'm gonna fish this, see what I can get. Oh, there's another. Oh yeah. Nathan, guess what I'm doing? Another one that just choked a jig. You should be out here. It's our vacation. Should have taken a picture, rub it in. So I was talking to my son right there. So it's kind of loud. I mean, these people, they're so rude. It's a weekday and people are mowing grass and trimming and other boats aren't catching fish and they're driving around, everybody's making noise. I'm trying to work over here and all these guys are making all this noise. So I apologize for that, but you saw, I was on the phone with my son having a conversation, and that's like 2 or 3 fish I caught while I was on the phone. Kind of shows you, you know, when you're talking, I'm not even paying attention, kind of leaving the lure out there moving every once in a while. Kind of tells me I need to slow down a little bit. nice one again. That one's coming right at me, so I didn't get a good hook in him. Some it kind of set twice. I got in goofy position. I barely kept it. You know, as soon as I lost tension on that thing, he pops out. That's how it is with the jig a lot. It cuts a big hole, you know, and you just got to keep tension on him. But that's why I'm actually using this, a medium heavy rod. Usually in grass, guys want, you know, a lot of times they go to braid and they go to real stiff rod. This is a medium heavy, extra fast. It bends right in the tip, so it loads up quick, but it's still not super powerful. I get some bend out of it, some tip, and I can keep them tied up. You know, it punches in. As long as you keep tension, they're fine. They lose tension, that thing just falls right out. Like when I took it out, so a little bit softer jig rod, even in the grass. Like I said, I used to want that crazy stiff broomstick, and now a little bit of tip seems like it works out better, keeps them buttoned up. And I went through a worm. I tried a slobber knocker with it. It looks like the jig. And trying to swim stuff through there. Finally, I've seen it coming up breaking a couple times. Finally went to this slobber knocker here with that drip minnow, more like the minnow style. I've seen it break the surface. I've seen shad coming up. That jig seems what they want. Of course, these are ones chasing, so chasing bait up higher. And of course, it's that schoolie, and you get that jig underneath, and that's what happens so many times in the grass. The ones that are buried down in it, you know, unless they're really active, those are the bigger ones, so that jig will go down and get them, and then the moving baits over the top, you get numbers, but it won't necessarily be the big ones most of the time. You catch some big ones, but a lot of times it's more the schoolies. So I'll show you what I'm doing right here. You can see, I mean, there's grass out here, but you can't really see it. But if I look on my screen here on the topo map, you can see these are shallow. Where all those colors are, that's shallower. This is a deeper spot right here. And this point, see, this is where I caught a bunch of fish. So it makes a little point right here. And I was sitting at that waypoint, throwing up there, and see a deep ditch comes behind it. What I'm doing now is coming up along this deep edge where there's deep water quick by, and you look, I'm sitting out here in deep water in like 16 feet, but there's no grass here. And I'm looking forward in my LiveScope. You look right there, see how it's pointed forward. I don't see anything. And I'm not looking for fish specifically. What I'm doing is looking for the edge of the grass. So I turn it, and it's at a right angle now. So you see the grass edge is out like 50 feet from me. So that's where I know to pitch my jig about 50 feet. I want to stay 10 feet inside the grass to 10 feet outside of it. So I'll pitch it up into the grass, goes to the bottom, and I hop it, and I get out this slick edge. And usually right on the edge of the grass, where the grass, you know, starts and stops, that tall stuff on the edge, the deepest grass, that's where they're going to sit. So I keep on using LiveScope to help me stay on the edge of the grass. Now I can go back and forth in my trolling motor and just zigzag back and forth on my map here, and I can stay on it, but the LiveScope makes it so much easier to stay in the target range. And like, look at this, here's an isolated clump. You know, it's shorter grass, and then there's some taller stuff right here. That's the key stuff. I'm not looking for fish necessarily. If I see a lot of bait or something over it and I see them chasing above, those are the ones you catch on bladed jigs and stuff, swim jigs, all that, and you catch keepers. If I'm seeing that activity up above though, then that's down below. The ones buried in the grass are the bigger ones. That jig goes in, and that's where it gets it out. So, you know, the LiveScope, it's just made it so much more convenient now to be able to stay on the edge of that grass. You know, there's a little one on the edge. He's, like I'm talking about, he's a little schooly, like, I don't know, that's like your 12, 14 incher right there. I'm not looking for those. I'm not trying to pick those off. I could get them with like a, you know, my jerk shad or something like that, wacky rig. The ones that are buried down there, see there's one, looks like he's kind of coming out of the grass here. That's a little better one. You can see he's just kind of swimming over the top. And that's what I'm looking for. And that jig just penetrates down in there, and that big one that's laying in the grass comes and gets it. Now, if you don't have LiveScope, you can, if you have GPS, one of the easiest ways, just idle your boat along the edge of the grass and just drop a bunch of waypoints where the grass line is. You know, sometimes like this, it's fairly close to the shore and it's fairly straight, so it's pretty easy to stay on it. You just keep zigzagging. If you cast up there and you don't feel grass, well, you're too far out. You have to move in closer. And then if your boat gets on top of it, well, you're in. The problem is you're not staying right on the edge, so it's not as efficient. If you graph it and drop those waypoints, especially like natural lakes up north where that grass is real irregular and it may go like 200 feet, 500 feet offshore, drop all those little waypoints along there, makes it really easier. Or you can just zigzag back and forth and just feel for it with your jig. You know, I'm feeling grass or I'm not feeling it. Like I said, LiveScope makes it most efficient. Dropping those waypoints will keep you on it pretty good too. I did it for years even without a graph, and just pitching and just feeling without even a graph when I was starting out. So you can do it. You don't have to have the technology. It makes you more efficient though, and you could your bait's in the strike zone. The nice thing is once you get bit though, usually there's a collection. Like that was a point right back there. So usually there's a sweet spot. So it's going to be like a turn in the grass, an isolated clump where there's some rock, where it's a quicker drop off. The grass type changes, goes from like eelgrass here to hydrilla or something. There's something that's holding them. So usually we can find them. You catch them, you get random ones along these boat docks or just going down the straight lines. And maybe there's like one brush pile down there you don't know about, or one clump of grass or something. That's good for a single one, but anytime you come to those little points or regularities, anytime you get a bite, a lot of times there's a school there. So that's time to either I drop my power poles or spot lock on the trolling motor or drop a marker buoy or something, fish it really good. We used to just kick the marker buoy over the side and stay next to it and fish it really strong, because a lot of times there's a big group and you may go an hour, 2 hours out of bite. Then once you find them, there'll be 25, 30 fish right in one spot. No exaggeration, like literally. And then one more consideration too, I'm using that skipping jig. I was thinking they're gonna be under these boat docks. The water's high, you can't even get under most of them. I mean, it's literally sealed off, it's so high. These are pole docks instead of floating ones. With that skipping jig, the Berkeley one, I like it just because it gives me that option. It has a really wide head, so it's weedless, it comes through. I'm using 3/8. A lot of guys use 1/2 and 3/4 in grass. If it's matted and you have to punch down through, that heavier one's better. When it's kind of loose grass, some of this is eelgrass, some is just kind of short hydrilla that's 2 to 5 feet tall and not real matted. There's openings down there. I like to kind of feather this. It'll lay on some of the grass and it'll kind of tumble down in. They're not buried up. If it was matted and shallower, you know, that's where I'm gonna punch it more. But early in the summer like this, I like to use the lighter jig. That slow fall a lot of times triggers them, and it keeps them above their head for a while. They can just track it. It seems like they like that better. I'm using a big creature hog here, that max scent. I like it with a jig because they want to let go of it real fast, so I do like the max scent. And the other thing is they're eating a lot of bluegill this time of year. Some of these are chasing shad too, and you get those gizzard shad. This is a bulky profile, so it looks like a gizzard shad or a bluegill, just that bigger profile, versus if they're more on, say, threadfin shad or something like that, or crawdads, then a more streamlined one, and like a craw trailer, something like that might be better. And that craw trailer, again, that'll kind of slow down the fall a little bit too if you need to use that heavier jig and you want the slow fall. But this creature hog, it's just kind of a subtle, that old like pork chunk sort of action back there. It's caught so many fish, and I feel like this one, I'm giving him that big bulky profile. I'm appealing to better fish. I figure I might give up a few numbers, but that big bulky jig, I'm gonna get the right ones. So here's the tough part about fishing a jig. You see here, I'm into some coontail. There's hydrilla, there's eelgrass. A jig bite, you know, a worm, if you don't set the hook quick enough, they're gonna swallow it. On a jig, if they feel a little bit of pressure, that weed guard and hook's gonna push up into their mouth, their gullet, and they're gonna spit it out super fast. They'll hang on to it. You can, like I've done this in practice, you can swim all around until you put pressure on them, then they're gonna let go of it. So the trick is to not put too much pressure on it, and know that a lot of times it's when I'm in a brush or I'm in rock or something like that, it's a lot easier to figure out a jig bite. When you're in grass, the problem is there's always grass hanging on it, so it just feels a little heavier, and that's what a bite feels like. So you have to be careful. If you're just picking up aggressively and you feel a little weight and you haven't got a bite in a while, and you just pull up hard, one of those times it's gonna be a fish and it's gonna go into his mouth and he's gonna spit it out. And you're like, oh God, you know, don't. When he spits it out, you really feel a thump. like seriously. So you need to so the big trick with the jig is make sure you're picking up really softly every time. If you have braid to a leader, that helps you a little bit. It's more sensitive, there's less stretch. Sometimes in this clear water, I feel like I get less bites. You know, and even if I go to like a 5-6 foot leader and I start using a 20-30 pound leader, it's kind of clunky through your guides and stuff. But I can feel a lot better that way. I like using fluorocarbon anymore these days, 15 to 25 pound fluoro, and you just have to pick up really gently. And like sometimes if you're not sure, set the hook. You put a tiny bit of extra pressure. It's not going to cost you anything if you set the hook, he's not there. If you think maybe he's there and you pick up and then he spits it out, I mean, it's going to drive you crazy. You just miss the fish. If you think it's a fish, set the hook. And a lot of times when you're not sure, it is. So pick up really softly. If there's pressure, just hold it there. If it's a fish, he's going to throb a little bit. You're going to feel him move a little bit. If you're not sure, and like it feels like it's moving, or I thought it felt one tick or something like that, it's time to reel up and set it. You're not going to get snagged, you know, brush piles. You set it, you're going to wedge it in there. In the grass, it's just going to tear out. So be really soft with those hands. A sensitive rod, I use the highest end rod I can get away with on that, the World Class from Fenwick. I want something that's going to be super sensitive because that, like I said, the little tap or something, you're in that feel game trying to feel he's there, but not let him feel you that you're there.